Hiya gobshites, my name is Stovetop and welcome back to the second episode of the Ultimate Movie Rank, where I attempt to rank as many movies as I can before death reminds me exactly why we're all cooped up in our humble abodes. Last time we took a look at the 1977 debut of our favorite web-slinger in The Amazing Spider-Man. Today we'll be taking a look at the sequel that released just 1 year later in 1978. While this sequel came to us folks here in the United States as ordinary episodes of the Amazing Spider-Man television series, namely The Deadly Dusts Part 1 and 2, it eventually was re-edited as a feature film for European audiences. It seems that somebody thought these episodes were good enough for the silver screen, so let's go ahead and peel our peepers and take a look at Spider-Man Strikes Back. The film begins, as many do, with a title card that leads us into an establishing shot of New York City. It is from here that we see none other than Spider-Man as he hobbles his way across the rooftops. We then see Police Captain Barbera, played by Michael Patsky, as he attempts to talk down a female jumper in a parallel to the climax of the first movie. Spider-Man continues to make his way across the rooftop sporting a stylish belt and bracelet. Is that Gucci I see, or perhaps Balenciaga? It appears that somebody could be better with their finances, Spidey me boy. After some unnecessary jumping around, our wall crawler earns his name by making his way down the building in a stunning POV shot and brings our damsel in distress to Captain Barbera. We then cut to Peter Parker as he talks to Rita, a beautiful young lady who has been working as J. Jonah Jameson's secretary for the past year. After sharing a good chuck with Peter about JJJ's penny-pinching ways, Rita asked him if today's rescue marks Spider-Man's first step into the public eye. It seems that despite being a friendly neighborhood hero, Spidey hasn't been too fond of giving anyone a close-up look at his tights, and I can't say I blame him. Jonah then makes his first appearance, looking quite different from the last time we saw him. According to IMDb, Robert F. Simon took over the role shortly after the pilot, which I believe is for the better. Long gone is the whiny Jonah of the past to make way for the stern hard-ass that we know and love. Peter and JJJ get into a small argument about a story that Peter would like to pursue. Jonah shoots it down, to which Rita gives him a heaping pile of sass for not giving Peter a chance to be more than a photographer. Peter warns Rita to be careful, as JJJ could have her fired and have his friends make it mighty difficult for her to find work in the future. Rita reminds Peter that,
"Oh yeah? Well, I got some friends too. That could make it very difficult for him to keep the tires on his rolls, if you know what I mean."
From there, we are taken to the sunny side of Miami Beach, where a female reporter is being assigned to go to the Big Apple to interview Spider-Man using her womanly charm.
You're kidding. You want to do a cover story on some weirdo who thinks he's a cross between Rudolph Nureyev and Tarzan?
She is told to find one Peter Parker. Meanwhile, Peter is back at his university class as his professor explains that he wants to operate a nuclear reactor there on campus. The professor assures the students that the operation is safe, but the students disagree. They explain that the plutonium that would be necessary, which is of course already on campus, would produce plutonium oxide, a toxic waste commonly referred to as the deadly dust, hence the original episode title. The students then go on to explain that the plutonium could be stolen and used to create an atomic bomb, a point Peter reinforces by explaining that the information needed to build a bomb could be accessed at any public library. Was it really that easy to make a bomb back then? Damn, that's whack. After the lecture, the three students, who I'll refer to as Curly, Blondie, and Stick, approach Peter and convince him to pitch a story to the Daily Bugle to put pressure on the university and hopefully get the project cancelled. Peter of course agrees, and we get a sense that Curly, Blondie, and Stick are in cahoots on some sort of plan. We then return to the female reporter as she interviews some sort of spider expert about Spider-Man. The expert mentions that a man with the powers of a spider could jump, what was it again?
He would be magnificent. He would have incredible strength. He could leap 20, 30 feet in the air.
Thanks, Doc. Keep that in mind as it comes into play later. The female reporter then makes her way to the Daily Bugle where she interrupts Peter as he makes his pitch about the university story. Sexy saxophone music plays as Peter gets an eye of the woman and we learn that her name is Miss Gail Hoffman. JJJ assigns Hoffman to tag along with Peter so she can get an exclusive interview the next time he and Spider-Man cross paths. Hoffman and Peter sit down at the university for some coffee where Peter can't help but talk about the reactor. Peter gets interrupted when Hoffman changes the subject to ask,
Tell me, how long have you known Spider-Man?
Quite a while, I guess.
You seem to know him better than anyone else. What is he like? What kind of fellow is he?
Well, he's fairly polite and reasonably intelligent.
What is he like physically?
Peter takes this moment to strike his ego and explain that they're,
Well, I suppose you could say we're kind of similar types.
a comment that is technically true, but still comes off as a little creepy to anyone who doesn't know his little secret. Come on, Peter, get your shit together. Luckily for us, the awkward moment gets interrupted when Peter's spider sense kicks in, showing him red and blue inverted shots that appear to depict a group breaking into the university. It's worth noting that in this show, spider sense works less like a general warning of danger like it does in the comics, and more like a clairvoyant vision akin to a 2003 Disney comedy. Peter leaves Hoffman in order to suit up and investigate what's going on. We next see our terrible trio of students as they make their way past the university's security. Fortunately for them, the personnel put in place to protect the plutonium aren't the most observant type, as they completely miss Curly and Blondie as they loudly bicker at each other.
Will you hurry up? This guard's gonna be coming back.
Leave him alone. He's going as fast as he can.
Shut up, both of you.
Then proceed to somehow not see Blondie after shining their flashlight directly in their face. Now, I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure you're supposed to look where your flashlight is pointing to get the most out of it. But what do I know? The students manage to escape with the plutonium just in time for Spidey to arrive and get spotted by security and blamed for the theft, thus making Spider-Man a wanted man. The next day, the students take a look at the newspaper to see how the university is responding to their hard work, but are upset to see that the paper reads,
There's virtually no danger of the material being used to build an atomic device.
Sounds like Baylor.
Upset at the underreaction, Stick decides that it's time to move forward with their plan. Now, I recently received my associate's degree in information technology, so I know a few things about college life. Granted, I lived off campus at a community college where I was still in high school for that first year, but that's besides the point. I know the basics, holding off papers until the last minute, playing games in the study rooms instead of actually studying, parties. Granted, I was never invited to one, but I was told they happen. Of course, the school experience is never complete without a little rebellion. And what better act of rebellion is there than building a bomb? Granted, I usually went with the bath variety and they went with a more atomic option, but to each their own. For those confused, let me explain. The students were upset that their professor was so under-concerned about having plutonium on campus, so they decided to take things into their own hands. They figured that the only way to prove that the plutonium could be stolen and used to make a bomb was to steal the plutonium and make a bomb. Makes sense, right? We later find out that they use modeling clay instead of plastic explosives to ensure that the bomb never actually explodes, but the whole stunt seems a little overboard in my book. As Peter explains to Hoffman,
And when it cools, it would soften like putty and be practically pure.
You mean it could be turned into a bomb?
Oh, for sure. But it would be very dangerous just by itself. You see, it could go supercritical.
Supercritical.
Yeah, the mass would become so dense that then it would set off a chain reaction.
You mean there could be an atomic explosion?
Well, no, but just the release of radiation by itself would be deadly.
he then proceeds to defend Spider-Man, explaining that he would never steal the plutonium, because for great power comes great responsibility, or something like that.
What is the point of having some kind of special power if you don't use it to help people?
Peter and Hoffman's conversation gets interrupted, however, when he receives a phone call asking if he would appear as a representative of the university's students in an interview about the theft of the plutonium. Hoffman decides to tag along, and they make their way to their interview. When they arrive, Peter's spider sense goes off, warning him of an ambush. They are attacked by Mr. White, a man who enjoys hot baths, martial arts, and stark white suits. Mr. White traveled to NYC to steal the plutonium and sell it to the highest bidder. Too bad he thinks Peter is the one who robbed the university. The police seem to have the same idea, for after Peter and Hoffman slip away through the fire escape and back to Hoffman's hotel room, Police Captain Barbera arrives the next morning to arrest Peter. Next we see Peter getting fired from his position at the Daily Bugle, out of police custody, making his arrest all but completely pointless. Peter turns in his press badge and makes off in a tizzy. Meanwhile, the students are making their finishing touches on the bomb. After they finish, Blondie falls down ill from radiation poisoning, so Curly and Stick take her to the hospital. Rita calls Peter to tell him about the new case of radiation sickness. Peter manages to put that circular peg through the round hole and makes his way to the hospital to confront the students about making the bomb. One of Mr. White's goons overhears Peter talking to Curly and Stick and discovers that the bomb is back at their apartment. Peter decides to leave and secure the bomb, but not before running into Hoffman. Peter manages to escape into the bathroom to change into a suit, no help from this guy, and climbs out the window. Hoffman notices his disappearing act, but Spider-Man is already gone, reusing footage from the last film to arrive at the student's apartment and cross paths with Mr. White and his goons. Spidey places a tracking device that looks like a Halloween spider ring on Mr. White's limo before making his way to the rooftop to fight some goons. After some punching, the main goon throws Spidey off the side of the building in a slow motion fall. In an admittedly impressive shot, Spider-Man deploys a web net to catch himself, but something falls off his belt in the process and breaks. What is it, you ask? I'm not sure, as it never comes back into play, so I guess it wasn't that important anyway. At least not as important as Mr. White, as he drives away with the bomb. The students get arrested for their unhealthy habit as Peter recruits Rita to track down the license plate number on Mr. White's limo, giving us this zinger of a line.
That boy's got more things shaking than a belly dancer in an earthquake.
You're the best, Rita. Rita manages to track down the plate to Mr. White's company in Los Angeles. Hoffman and Peter manage to strong-arm JJJ into pursuing the exclusive story, getting Peter's job back, and funding a trip to California. JJJ, Hoffman, and Peter make their way to Los Angeles, where Peter sneaks off to the roof and uses his tracking device. Hoffman catches him, though, and begins to suspect that Peter might be Spider-Man. Peter manages to talk himself out of the situation, convincing Hoffman that he's working with Spider-Man, who is close by. Peter then says this line.
It's a lot closer to you than you'd ever expect.
Which would make any sane person suspicious, but Hoffman doesn't seem to notice. Back in New York, Captain Barbera gets a phone call from Mr. White requesting $1 billion in exchange for the return of the bomb. JJJ, Peter, and Hoffman all go on a road trip to track down the limousine. After finding it, they are led into a car chase that is cut short when the limo deploys caltrop, flattening the 4 tires of our hero's car. Peter and Hoffman run down the block to a bike shop to steal a pair of dirt bikes, leaving Jonah behind with the bill. Jonah grabs a motor trike and follows close behind, which is hilarious because everybody knows 3 wheels are funnier than 2. The limo turns into a dirt road, apparently losing a hubcap in the process, and leads the chase into a Western movie set. Peter's spider sense goes off, so he runs off screen to suit up, appearing on screen again to cartoon sound effects foreshadowing events to come. A Western standoff ensues between Spidey and one of the goons, but is interrupted when Hoffman comes crashing into the scene. Looks like somebody could have used a 3rd wheel. Spider-Man cuts to the chase and starts fighting goons, one of which pulls out a pair of nunchucks in a scene that was cut from the VHS release of the film for unknown reasons. Perhaps using weapons was seen as too violent for kids, but this movie has a literal atomic bomb in it, so it's hard to say. It's at this point that we get to the moment we've all been waiting for. I hope you're sitting down, because we finally get the high jump, baby! You know, the one the spider expert mentioned at the beginning of the movie. I love it when things come together. As a bonus, Spidey starts teleporting and pulling things down with his webs, but nothing comes close to that vertical leap. The fight ends when Spider-Man almost gets hit by the limo as it drives away, causing Spidey to hobble off into the woods just before JJJ arrives with Peter close behind. Peter finds his tracking device on the ground, causing the trail to go cold. Peter and the gang go back to their suite where Rita calls Jonah to tell them about Mr. White's demands. Peter and Hoffman decide to go investigate Mr. White's company, a recording studio where they get distracted by a couple singing. Can't say I blame them. Unfortunately, I can't play the song here, but trust me, it's a good one. Peter gets pulled aside by Mr. White's secretary just long enough for a goon to stop by and kidnap Miss Hoffman. Peter interrogates the secretary and gets the address of Mr. White's home, where Mr. White has forced Hoffman to wear a bikini for, well, no reason at all. Gotta love casual 70s sexism. Mr. White tells Hoffman that he's going to set off the bomb at the presidential speech in LA at 3 o'clock if his demands are not met. Peter arrives and suits up to show off more of his high jumping ability in slow motion. Spider-Man fights this kick-happy goon before jumping to the pool side to fight the main goon one-on-one. Spidey throws him into the pool to buy him time to web the guy in one of the worst effects of the whole film. Mr. White then places the bomb at the top of a building, setting it to detonate at 3:05. We then see Spidey as he sets up a plan with some rando in which he aims to jump out of a helicopter and onto the building with the bomb via an airbag which he just kind of assumes is going to be there. Lucky for the wall crawler, the rando was having a rough go of it, so he decides to give him a ride at no cost. Spider-Man takes to the sky, and we get a look at what I'm going to assume is a reference to the Fantastic Four. Come on, that building's too extraordinary to be anything else. Spider-Man jumps from the helicopter in a move I like to call the spider plank, and most likely realizes that that airbag he was counting on isn't there. Rather than fall to his death, Spider-Man decides to web himself onto Mr. White's helicopter, which looks suspiciously like the one Spidey just jumped from. Props to whatever poor intern was tossed from the side of a helicopter to get this POV shot. It's nice work. From here we get Spider-Man's signature move, the spider dangle, a move so impressive that they put it on the poster.
Spin.
As to be expected, Spider-Man drops down onto the building and disables the bomb and allows Mr. White to escape, causing everybody at the presidential speech to clap despite having no idea what's going on. Seems odd, but maybe I should start clapping and cheering at random moments just in case someone does something interesting nearby. Wow, you did it. You did that thing that you were trying to do, and that's good. You did it. I'm so proud of you. Wow, yay. You're such a good lad or lass. Peter returns to the suite and gives JJJ a picture of Spider-Man with the bomb. I'm not sure how that makes Spidey look more innocent and not more guilty, but Jonah seems pleased and gives Peter the suite for the rest of the week.
That is really nice of you. Thank you. But, Mr. Jameson, today is Friday. There are only 2 more days left in the week.
Well, what do you want for nothing?
Hoffman makes the comment that Peter is no Spider-Man, to which Peter says,
Well, how do you know? You've never seen me in tights.
Hoffman invites Peter to put some on so she can reconsider, because
That boy's got more things shaking than a belly dancer in an earthquake.
Hoffman winks and the movie ends, with the implication that Peter shows Hoffman his spider dangle, if you get my drift. And that was 1978's Spider-Man Strikes Back. So were these episodes good enough for the silver screen? Despite its obvious flaws, Spider-Man Strikes Back is a genuinely good film that I would happily rewatch in my free time. The characters are more likable than the first film, with better action, better effects, and better drama. Majority of the effects in this film were done practically, with some notable exceptions, and I really think that helps with the immersion of the film and gives an overall better experience. Spider-Man Strikes Back is a hidden gem of the franchise, but where does it rank? With only one other movie on the ranking thus far, this choice is easy. The sequel improves on the first in almost every way, so congratulations! You are the best movie of all time, according to me, until something better comes along and takes your place, so enjoy it while you can! And that concludes this episode of the Ultimate Movie Rank. Make sure to join us next time when we check out Spider-Man's other film released in 1978, Spider-Man, also known as Spider-Man the Movie. To view the complete rank, go to www.ulickstovetop.com and click UMR, or click the link in the description below. Bye ya!